In this section, we're now going to refactor our state initialization that is currently taking place inside the constructor. Remember that when we initially did this initialization process, I'd mentioned that there were two ways to initialize our state. In a lot of blog posts and documentation, you're going to see the alternate way that does not use a constructor function. So I just want you to be aware that this alternate method exists. And in fact, we're probably going to use this alternate method quite a bit throughout the course. So here's the refactor. I'm going to go outside of my constructor function, right underneath it, and I'm going to say state equals an empty object, and I'll put in there two properties. Lat is null, and error message is an empty string, like so. So what you see right here with the constructor function and the long form this.state equals blah, blah, blah is 100% equivalent to just writing out state equals and then our state initialization right after it. Now notice that I did not put a this.state inside there. It's just state by itself. Now I first want to prove to you that doing this refactor works, and then after that I want to show you that the code that we're writing right here, like this single line, is equivalent to defining the constructor function and initializing our state inside there. So I'm going to take my constructor and I'm going to delete it entirely. So we don't need the constructor anymore. We can condense the entire state initialization to just be that line of code by itself. So let's make sure that this still works. I'm going to save this file, and I'll flip back over to my browser, and I'll just refresh the page and make sure the application still works. And yep, it does. No syntax errors, nothing like that. If you want to, you could reset your location preference and make sure that all the different states of our application work as well. So like I said, what we have there now is equivalent to what we had before with the constructor function. So I want to prove that to you very quickly, just to help you understand some of what is going on behind the scenes here. Now, as a quick reminder, the code that we write inside of our code editor is not what actually shows up inside of our browser. The code we write here runs through that tool called Babel. It takes the JavaScript code that we write and it converts it down to some form of JavaScript that can be understood by all popular browsers. So with that in mind, I'm going to navigate to the Babel homepage. We've been here once before. It's at babeljs.io. So I'll open up a new browser tab and go over there. And then at the very top, I'm going to find the button that says try it out. Now, as you recall, this opens up a little repl right here where we could enter in some code on the left-hand side and see the transpiled version over on the right-hand side. Now, I'm going to open up the sidebar very quickly, and I'm going to turn on the stage 0, 1, 2, and 3 presets like so. Then inside of the editor on the right-hand side, I'm going to put out kind of a very brief abbreviation of our app component as it stands right now. I'm not going to put the entire thing in there. I'm just going to put a couple of different methods. So I'm going to say class app extends React.component. And then I'm going to define the constructor function in here and show you the original version of what we had inside the constructor. So I'll say constructor, it's called with props. And inside there, we're going to call super with props. And then we will do our state initialization by saying this.state, and I'll just define the lat property as null. I'll ignore the error message. Okay, so after running this thing through Babel, with just those presets that you see right there, that is what we get on the right-hand side. Basically unchanged. So now let's take our this.state right here, or the entire constructor call. I'm going to remove the entire constructor, and then I'm going to define state equals lat is null, like so. So look at what happened after our code ran through Babel. And by the way, really quickly, if you don't see something that looks like this on the right-hand side, then you can try enabling some of the other presets over here. All right, so take a look at what got generated. You'll notice that when we put in this alternate syntax over here, Babel took our code, it took the entire class, and it actually implemented the constructor function for us. And then inside the constructor function, it did exactly what we had written before. It said this.state equals our initialization for state, which was the object that had lat is null, like so. So when you do this abbreviated syntax right here, after it goes through Babel, you're doing the exact same thing that we had when we were defining the constructor function. There is no difference because Babel is going to build up the constructor for you anyways and initialize your state in there. So what's the lesson? The lesson is that using this little abbreviation right here, or this shortened syntax, is completely equivalent to what we had before. It just means that we have to write slightly less code. We don't have to define the constructor and call that super and deal with props and all that kind of other stuff. Okay, so good little refactor, makes our component just a little bit easier to read. Let's now take a quick pause. We'll come back to the next section and we're going to continue working on our app.